Just because Robert Sterling's childhood sweetheart wanted to see the tribal custom of walking marriage, I, the heir of the Eagle Peak tribe, was drugged and locked in the attic. Willow, Sarah Miller is just too curious. Put on a show for her, liven things up. He brought 100 male models to climb into my window, insisting I choose one to make it look real. I fought against the drug's effects, digging my nails into my palms, letting the blood stain the window frame. By the time I sent the last male model away, it was already dawn. Ignoring the bloody mess on my hands, I broke down the door, wanting to find him for an antidote. Only to witness him and his childhood sweetheart entangled under our wedding photo. Caught red-handed, a flicker of guilt crossed his eyes, but he didn't stop. Willow, Sarah Miller just wants to experience the joy of an Eagle Peak woman. You understand, right? It's her first time, she can't be defiled by some random guy. I had no choice but to satisfy her curiosity. According to your tribe's rules, I'm free during the day, but don't worry, every night I belong only to you. However, for the wedding in half a month, by our rules, I need to give Sarah Miller an explanation. Anyway, you Eagle Peak people don't care about such formalities. You can be her bridesmaid then, and it'll still be like I'm marrying you. I could have been a queen, unmarried and free, but for him, I left the tribe for 3 years, just to be his obedient wife. Now, he wants to marry someone else. I'll grant his wish. Excuse me. Please continue. I let out a cold laugh and turned to leave for the hospital. From behind me came Sarah Miller's sweet laughter. Robert, are Eagle Peak women really this sensible and generous? Willow wouldn't get angry and go back to the tribe, would she? Robert Sterling said hoarsely, she was the first woman to leave the tribe, and I've tamed her for years. She's no longer that GLE soaring in the sky. I'm not afraid she'll run. Do you really have time to worry about others right now, huh? My steps faltered. My heart felt pierced by a sharp blade. So in his eyes, I was already a tamed pet. My 3 years of devotion and sacrifice were just a joke he could easily trample on. The sounds of their indulgence behind me were like a torturous melody, penetrating my eardrums and stabbing my heart. If I could be the first Eagle Peak woman to break her wings and leave the tribe to pursue true love, then naturally, when that love is gone, I can just as decisively walk away. That evening, Robert Sterling personally chose a formal dress for me. Willow, we're getting married soon. My family wants to see how well you've learned etiquette. You need to perform well for me. Don't embarrass me. I refused coldly. His hand paused on his tie, and he glanced at me. You're not still angry about last night, are you? Anyway, didn't you enjoy yourself? I chose those male models based on what Eagle Peak women supposedly like. I was stunned. He actually thought I would choose a man to alleviate the drug's effects. What exactly did he take me for? When I was forcefully brought to Sterling Manor, Sarah Miller was fluttering among the guests like a social butterfly. As soon as I entered, she scurried over, hooked her arm through Robert Sterling's, and whined, Robert, I've been here for ages, what took you so long? He released my hand without hesitation, wrapped an arm around Sarah Miller's waist, and squeezed her affectionately. Didn't you say your back ached and your legs were weak, and you couldn't make it? Stop it! Everyone's watching. What are you saying? Their blatant flirting made the guests' mocking gazes stab at me like knives. Whispers flooded around me like a tide. Is that the woman Mr. Sterling brought back from the mountains? Heard she's from some tribe. Probably never Eve. N went to college. Grandmother Sterling was furious, saying her son had been seduced by that woman. Sarah Miller seemed to think of something and blinked at me, feigning innocence. Willow, I heard that women from your tribe can sleep with any man? At her words, laughter erupted. She then covered her face, giggling sweetly, and apologized to me. Willow, I was just curious, it's not like I'm saying you're promiscuous. Now, the guests' gazes were filled with mockery. But because Robert Sterling had once insisted on marrying only me, they only dared to exchange glances among themselves. Robert Sterling pretended not to notice the men's lingering stares at my chest. He playfully tapped Sarah Miller's nose, his eyes full of indulgence. Ah, you're curious about everything, it'll get you into trouble. But seriously, Willow isn't that kind of woman. Sarah Miller seemed unconvinced. Casually, as if by accident, she brought up the 100 male models who climbed into the window last night and asked me which one was the lucky guy. I gripped my wine glass and said coldly, although our tribe practices the tribal custom of walking marriage, we wouldn't shamelessly steal another woman's man. At my words, Sarah Miller's face changed, and her eyes instantly filled with tears. Willow, I shouldn't have said that. It's okay if you don't want to talk about it. She clumsily held up her wine glass to toast me, but I turned away. But she chased after me and accidentally stepped on my dress. I fell heavily to the ground, and the red wine in Sarah Miller's hand poured all over me. Amidst gasps of surprise, Grandmother Sterling's sharp voice was particularly clear, coming from the sticks. She can't even stand properly. How could she ever be a Mrs. Sterling? Sarah Miller is so much more sensible. Saying this, she slipped the heirloom bracelet from her wrist onto Sarah Miller's. Sarah Miller feigned refusal. Tears instantly flowing. Auntie, this bracelet should go to Willow. How could I possibly wear something so precious? Willow, I'm so sorry, I really didn't mean to. Robert Sterling, however, stopped her from taking off the heirloom bracelet and said coldly, my mother gave it to you, so keep it. This is the welcome gift you deserve. Besides, you didn't do anything wrong. Why are you apologizing to her? He glanced at me guiltily, thinking I didn't understand the meaning of the heirloom bracelet. My calm, unruffled gaze made him lose patience. What are you just standing there for? Go change your clothes. Don't stand here embarrassing yourself. I slowly stood up. The red wine dripped down my dress, leaving a dark red stain on the ground, just like my shattered heart. 3 years ago, Robert Sterling was in trouble near the Eagle Peak tribe. I saved him, even risking my life to climb to the summit of Eagle Peak to dig up a rare mountain herb for him. After being saved, learning of my kindness, he, who had fallen for me at first sight, swore to protect me for a lifetime. Now, he personally crushed my dignity into the dust. After changing, I had intended to slip away unnoticed. But as I passed the banquet hall, I saw a scene that froze my blood. Sarah Miller was wearing the wedding dress my mother had personally designed, standing beside Robert Sterling, smiling coyly and triumphantly. That wedding dress was sewn stitch by my mother over countless nights, every detail imbued with her blessings for me. And now, it was worn by another woman. Seeing me, Sarah Miller recoiled like a startled deer, stumbling backward and knocking over the hot soup a servant was holding. The scalding soup splashed onto the wedding dress. She shrieked and frantically tried to wipe it off, but as she bent over, she deliberately exposed the dense network of ambiguous red marks on her back. This prompted everyone to mock me. So even that woman makes mistakes. And nobody trying to be a socialite is a joke after all. Hearing these taunts, Sarah Miller's eyes were full of triumph and excitement, yet she looked up and apologized to me with a choked voice. Willow, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I watched her coldly and said sharply, take it off. Willow, please don't be angry. I'll buy you another one. Her voice was trembling with excitement, but the crowd thought she was afraid of me. They all called me jealous and vicious, saying I was unfit to be Mrs. Sterling. Before I could speak, Robert Sterling, after confirming Sarah Miller hadn't been burned, frowned at me with utter impatience. Willow, where did all the etiquette I taught you go? Sarah Miller already apologized. Who are you giving that cold shoulder to? Didn't you see you scared her so much she almost got burned? Sarah Miller tugged at his sleeve, sobbing softly. Robert, don't be mean to Willow. It's all my fault for dirtying the wedding dress. Robert Sterling immediately softened his voice and gently patted her back. You didn't do it on purpose. She can just order another one. Order another one? He knew perfectly well that my mother had only just finished sewing this wedding dress before she died. It was a keepsake and one of a kind. He secretly brought the wedding dress to Sterling Manor behind my back, then let Sarah Miller wear it. Anyone who wasn't blind could see she dirtied it on purpose, yet he tells me to just order another one? I stared at the stained wedding dress. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by a large hand, even breathing hurt. He could have not loved me, could have not married me. A simple breakup and I would have left on my own. Why did he have to humiliate me like this? I walked over expressionlessly and, under everyone's shocked gazes, reached out to pull off the wedding dress Sarah Miller was wearing. But as soon as I touched the wedding dress ripped open at the chest. Sarah Miller shrieked and awkwardly covered her chest, but still exposed herself in front of everyone. Willow, have you made enough of a scene? Robert Sterling quickly took off his suit jacket and wrapped her up tightly. He turned, grabbed my wrist, and flung me to the ground. What the hell is wrong with you? Who told you to bully Sarah Miller like this? You like taking clothes off so much, then strip naked and apologize to Sarah Miller. My movement to push myself up froze. I looked up at him in disbelief. Do you really think I would ruin the wedding dress my mother handmade just to embarrass that other woman? The words "the other woman" stung him. His face turned ashen, and he raised his hand to slap me. Robert! Sarah Miller rushed over and grabbed him, tears streaming down her face. Don't hit Willow. It's my fault for wearing her wedding dress. It's normal for her to be upset. Grandmother Sterling, however, was so angry she pounded the table. This is outrageous. A woman from the backwoods dares to cause trouble in my Sterling family? She shouted sternly, someone, make her kneel outside until she admits she's wrong. The servants exchanged glances, not daring to move. Seeing me glaring defiantly at him, Robert Sterling said coldly, Willow, are you going to strip or not? All the men's eyes widened, filled with anticipation. But I didn't move. He finally lost patience. Didn't you hear Grandmother Sterling? Make her kneel outside. I let out a scoff and turned to walk towards the door. Robert Sterling knew me too well. He saw at a glance that I wouldn't actually kneel. He grabbed me forcefully, his eyes dark and menacing. Willow, don't even think about running. Otherwise, don't force me to do this myself. I looked up at him, enunciating each word. Robert Sterling, are you worthy? His face instantly changed. He yanked me roughly into the backyard. Here, it's the traditional view of husband as head of household. You make a mistake, I punish you, it's only right. How only right? Thought this was the Victorian era? I struggled forcefully out of his grasp. Before I could steady myself, a servant brutally kicked my knee. I fell heavily to my knees on the cold stone tiles. The torrential downpour instantly drenched me completely. Robert Sterling, however, went back inside to attend the family banquet without a backward glance. Rainwater streamed down my face, indistinguishable from tears. A dull ache came from my abdomen. It was the wound from climbing the snow mountain to save Robert Sterling, when I fell and was cut, nearly losing my life. Over the years, that wound would ache whenever I was exposed to cold weather or cold water. Before Sarah Miller returned, Robert Sterling was incredibly attentive to the scar every day, afraid I'd be even slightly uncomfortable. He said I saved his life, and he would spend the rest of his days loving and protecting me, making me the happiest woman. The scar was still there, and his vows still echoed in my ears, but the one who made them had changed his heart. 2 servants held me down as I knelt in the rain for half an hour. My vision began to blur. A high fever made my body tremble uncontrollably. The servants thought I was pretending to be pitiful to gain sympathy and sneered, "Stop pretending. Mr. Sterling said you can't kneel for 1 minute less." I tried hard to get up, but as soon as I moved, I fell heavily to the ground. "Mr. Sterling, something's wrong, she's fainted." The servant rushed into the banquet hall in a panic. As the door opened, Sarah Miller's sweet laughter, Robert Sterling's soft whispers, and the guests' fake compliments flooded into my ears. Mr. Sterling and Miss Miller are truly a perfect match. Yes, much better than that wild girl. I curled up in the rain, my consciousness slowly fading. Willow! In my daze, I seemed to hear a familiar voice, coming from a distant place. Listening again, it was only Robert Sterling's voice filled with disdain, sometimes near, sometimes far. Willow, stop using the past to guilt-trip me. You were wrong, plain and simple. Don't push it. It was the servant's action of pouring warm water for me that woke me. But no matter how hot the water, it couldn't warm my icy, drenched body. Mr. Sterling said for you to drink the hot water and keep kneeling. Tears mixed with rain flowed into my mouth. I couldn't tell what made my mouth so bitter. In just a moment, my body grew more and more uncomfortable. The feeling of needing to throw up and have diarrhea made me struggle to rush towards the back door. but the servant stuck out a leg and tripped me. As I fell heavily, the banquet hall door opened, and I lost control of my bowels in front of everyone. The lively banquet hall fell silent because of my condition. Everyone stared at me in disbelief, pinching their noses, their eyes full of disgust and revulsion. Only Sarah Miller, feigning no disgust, ran over to help me up. But she whispered in my ear, "How does it feel to be given laxative and embarrass yourself in front of everyone?" It was her. But my gaze swept over Grandmother Sterling. She looked completely unconcerned, clearly aware of what had happened. Thinking about it, it made sense. Without her permission, how could the servants follow Sarah Miller's orders to give me laxative? Ignoring everyone's stares, I didn't hesitate to raise my hand and slap Sarah Miller, but Robert Sterling rushed forward and kicked me so hard I hit the tree behind me. My stomach churned violently, worsening my vomiting and diarrhea. The guests all shrieked, yelling, "Get her out of here, it's disgusting." Robert Sterling pinched his nose in disgust and told the servants to throw me outside. "You're filthy, get lost." He forgot that when he had vomiting and diarrhea from eating poisonous mushrooms in the Eagle Peak tribe, I carried him home without a hint of disgust, saving his life a second time. As the high and mighty Mr. Sterling, perhaps the most embarrassing moments of his life were all witnessed by me. So, because he didn't love me anymore, did he want me to experience that kind of humiliation too? Seeing me in such a pathetic state, Sarah Miller kindly spoke up for me. "Robert, don't be like this. Didn't you say that back in the Eagle Peak tribe, Willow always saved you? That time, didn't you also?" She stopped herself just in time, preserving Robert Sterling's dignity. But he roared at me coldly, "If it weren't for her, how could I have eaten poisonous mushrooms by mistake?" So, he was willing to share even his most embarrassing moments with Sarah Miller, yet he wanted to put all the blame on me. I countered with a cold laugh, "Robert Sterling, has your conscience been eaten by a dog?" He was instantly consumed by rage. He grabbed my collar and gnashed his teeth beside my ear. "Willow, if only you were half as sensible and knew etiquette as Sarah Miller, my mother wouldn't look down on you. You think you're embarrassing yourself? Wrong. Everything you've done today is embarrassing me. How am I supposed to marry you now?" "You don't need to marry." I passed out from the high fever and abdominal pain. When I woke again, I was in our bridal suite. All the dirt was gone, as if everything from last night had been a dream. But the dull ache in my abdomen was a constant reminder that it was all real. Seeing I was awake, Robert Sterling brought a bowl of warm chicken soup and coaxed me gently, "Willow, my being heartless towards you is for your own good. After all, you were the one who spoke rudely to Sarah Miller first and embarrassed her in front of everyone. You even used vomiting and diarrhea to sicken my family. If I kept defending you, my mother would only hate you more, and it would only be harder for you to marry into the Sterling family in the future. How considerate, being heartless all for my good." I laughed coldly, stating calmly, "Robert Sterling, my mother instructed Sarah Miller to give me the laxative. Who are you trying to fool by acting like the good guy? Was it me who embarrassed you, or was it you who indulged them in humiliating me? Shouldn't you know the answer to that?" Before, he always taught me that in life, you need to maintain appearances and play dumb. So, even when I knew he and Sarah Miller were involved, I swallowed the bitterness alone. I thought he had boundaries. I thought he wasn't one of those jerks who treats their current partner like an idiot the moment their childhood sweetheart returns. Sadly, I was wrong. Robert Sterling was exposed. The guilt in his eyes flickered and was quickly replaced by angry embarrassment. He smashed the chicken soup, letting the fragments splash and cut the back of my hand, yet he ignored it. "Willow, if you insist on making malicious accusations and being so stubborn, then you deserve to be looked down on." I watched his ugly face coldly and burst out laughing. My gaze made him feel guilty. He turned and slammed the door shut, but accidentally knocked over the clay figures we had molded together for our wedding. Looking at the shattered pieces on the floor, I felt that leaving the tribe for him, without hesitation, was the biggest mistake of my life. In that moment, I was absolutely certain that the one who truly looked down on me was Robert Sterling. If he had given me the respect and affection I deserved, how would Sarah Miller have dared to humiliate me so openly? And how would those people from the Sterling family have so brazenly made a joke out of me? For the next few days, Robert Sterling didn't come home. He gave me time to pack my luggage. But Sarah Miller kept tagging me in her social media feed in real time, showing off what they were doing. They went to take wedding photos, kissed at the top of the Ferris wheel and posted about it, visited a landmark/bridge to leave engraved locks, Whispering Falls Bridge rituals. I hadn't intended to respond, but Sarah Miller deliberately sent me a message to provoke me. Willow, why aren't you liking my posts? Are you maybe crying your eyes out alone at home because you're so jealous? Since that's what she wanted, I'd give it to her. I liked all of her social media posts. Unexpectedly, Robert Sterling was displeased. He sent me a message cursing me. What are you so jealous about now? I don't even care that you were a woman who could sleep with any man before. Now I've only slept with Sarah Miller. How can you be so narrow-minded? I couldn't help but laugh again, fueled by anger. He forgot that when I left the Eagle Peak tribe with him, I was still a virgin. And the one who drugged me and made me act with 100 male models was him. I deleted the message, went to the landmark/bridge to leave engraved locks, Whispering Falls Bridge rituals, and took down the red ribbons where he'd promised forever with me. I also cut the engraved locks. Seeing the red ribbons and engraved locks where he and Sarah Miller had wished for a lifetime together right beside them, my already numb heart couldn't be stirred in the slightest. After doing all this, I went home only to find that Sarah Miller had moved into the master bedroom. Willow, you're not going to get angry again, are you? Robert said that since I've been pampered like royalty since I was young, the master bedroom is more suitable for me. I didn't hear her words. I only saw my heirloom wolf tooth necklace being used by Sarah Miller to play with her dog like a toy. That was the symbol of the heir of the Eagle Peak tribe. How bold I let her play with it so disrespectfully? I immediately went to get it back. Robert Sterling shrugged it off. It's just a piece of junk necklace. Why make a fuss? I tried to grab it. Sarah Miller's dog bared its teeth and bit the back of my hand. Blood instantly flowed out. Robert Sterling's face changed dramatically, and he moved to help me. Sarah Miller, however, deliberately fell, clutching her scraped knee and crying out in pain. Willow, why did you push me? Robert Sterling was rushing towards me, but abruptly diverted himself to her, letting the dog bite me tightly. I was in so much pain that tears streamed down my face, but he remained indifferent. Instead, when I grabbed a nearby chair and injured Sarah Miller's dog, he yelled at me, Willow, stop it. That's Sarah Miller's buddy. How dare you? I didn't stop. With my blood-soaked hand, I lifted the chair and smashed Sarah Miller's dog to death. She pushed Robert Sterling away, threw herself onto the now motionless dog, and sobbed hysterically, Willow, if you want to kill or hurt someone, come after me. Why would you be so cruel to my buddy? Holding the blood-soaked dog, she knelt and bowed deeply to me. I shouldn't have come back. I'll take Buddy and leave forever right now. The dog's blood stained her pure white dress red, making it look as if she had been severely abused by me. Robert Sterling, his eyes bloodshot, held her close and comforted her. Then he turned and roared at me, get out. I turned and left without hesitation. Seeing me leave so resolutely, the blood constantly dripping from my hand, he finally softened and said, Willow, get out and take a good look at where you went wrong. If you can't figure out who's in charge here, you won't even be a bridesmaid tomorrow. I closed the door forcefully, shutting out his condescending words. This place I thought would be my home ultimately had no place for me. Clutching the heirloom wolf tooth necklace tightly, and unable to find a taxi, I had no choice but to take off my high heels, throw them in the trash can, and walk away. Over these years, for Robert Sterling, I had learned rules, learned the etiquette of high society, given up drinking, and learned to eat delicately and wear high heels. I had worked hard to become the educated, graceful, and poised Mrs. Sterling he wanted, but in the end, I had given my heart to the wrong person. My feet were rubbed raw, but I didn't feel a hint of pain. I was already numb from the hurt. After getting my wounds treated at the hospital and receiving the rabies vaccine, I headed straight for the airport. 2 days later, the Sterling family held the wedding at the largest hotel in Newport. Guests gathered. Robert Sterling, who had waited a long time for my apology, finally panicked. As his calls flooded my phone, I stood at the village gate of the Eagle Peak tribe, hanging up each one. My phone vibrated in my hand, his messages popping up one after another. Willow! If you still want to marry me, get over here and apologize. Oh, and the bridesmaid dress is a style you like, similar to the one my mother sewed. I looked at the last message he sent and curved my lips into a smile. An Eagle Peak woman, once she leaves, never looks back. After sending it, I broke the SIM card in half and threw it into the manure pile nearby. Upon learning of my return, the men of the tribe moved swiftly. They knelt on one knee before me, placing their right hands over their left chests. Queen Willow, we welcome your return. My gaze swept over each familiar face, and the tip of my nose suddenly stung. Rise. It felt so good to be home. While everyone in the tribe was celebrating my return, in the largest hotel in Newport, Robert Sterling was staring at his phone screen, his face chillingly dark. Robert, the auspicious hour has arrived. Why aren't you coming? Sarah Miller came running, holding up her wedding dress, her exquisitely made-up face full of happiness. But the moment she saw his phone screen was showing he was contacting me, she instantly became unhappy. She pouted and swung his arm, whining, Robert, the guests are getting impatient. How about we find a different bridesmaid and not wait for Willow? Anyway, I don't need her to apologize. I can forgive anything she does. On the other hand, if she still holds a grudge and ruins our wedding, the Sterling family will be incredibly embarrassed. Her seemingly generous and proper words, which she thought were so clever, were like a sharp sword piercing Robert Sterling's heart. His mind wasn't on the scene of me embarrassing myself at the Sterling family banquet that day, but on the calmness with which I had said I didn't need him to marry me before I fainted. In that moment, my eyes held no infatuation, no disappointment, and no anger towards him. They were as calm as if I were looking at a stranger. That sentence, now, was like a demonic sound, constantly swirling in his mind. It finally made him remember that the women of the Eagle Peak tribe have always believed in the tribal custom of walking marriage. The men don't marry, the women don't marry. When love is gone, they naturally part ways, and from then on, go their separate ways. It was he who had made me look forward to marriage. It was he who had made me feel that being bound together by law was a sacred and happy thing for people in love. But now, I, who had most looked forward to marrying him, was unwilling to appear at the wedding, and had even sent such a decisive message. Just like the determined way I had turned my back and left after being humiliated at the Sterling family that day. In fact, in that moment, he had the illusion of losing me, but he was too confident. He was confident that an eagle whose wings had been broken and who had been taught Med would stay by his side for life. He even felt that Sarah Miller's return was perfectly timed. It saved him from facing his mother's dissatisfaction with me and arguing with her, and it also compensated for his past regret of not being able to be with his childhood sweetheart. Furthermore, it allowed him to have both women, enjoying the pleasure of having two lovers. The reason he didn't care about my wedding dress being ruined was simply because he had already secretly ordered a bridesmaid dress for me. He thought that the bridesmaid dress he personally designed would absolutely not lose out to my mother's handmade wedding dress. He thought that as long as he yielded, I would wag my tail and beg by his side like a dog. That feeling of being looked up to had made him lose himself completely. He had conquered the queen of a matriarchal tribe. This achievement, worthy of being written into the history of the Eagle Peak tribe, had made him arrogant and lost himself. He stared intently at my message saying I would never look back. The panic in his heart swept over him like a flood. Unwilling to give up, he continued to call me. But only a cold female voice told him that I truly would never answer him again. Sarah Miller, standing beside him, saw him in such a state. Jealousy and malice flickered in her eyes, yet she deliberately leaned against Robert Sterling and whined, Robert, Willow's temper is just too much. Why don't you just ignore her for a few days? At most, we can give her another wedding later. Shut up! Robert Sterling suddenly gripped his phone tightly, his knuckles white. Without Willow, I'm not getting married. He turned and roared at his assistant, go find Willow. Go bring her to me. Now. Immediately. Right now. The assistant nervously dialed a number. A moment later, he rushed to Robert Sterling, his face pale with shock. Mr. Sterling, it's bad. Miss Willow, she took a flight 2 days ago. She's probably already in the Eagle Peak tribe. Robert Sterling was struck as if by lightning. He staggered back 2 steps, unable to accept the news that I had really left. But looking at the flight information on his assistant's phone, he had to believe that I no longer wanted to marry him. He finally remembered what I had said when I left the Eagle Peak tribe with him. Robert Sterling, if one day you betray me, I will leave without looking back. He didn't understand why I hadn't left when I saw him and Sarah Miller intimate with my own eyes, but insisted on leaving right before the wedding. The memories of that week replayed in his mind like a slideshow, reminding him of all the despicable things he had done to me. He clutched his hair in pain, his face full of regret. Willow, I was wrong, it was all my fault. Sarah Miller saw his agony and quickly signaled to Grandmother Sterling. Grandmother Sterling immediately ordered the bodyguards beside her to escort her son and Sarah Miller to complete the wedding. Robert Sterling, however, shoved away Sarah Miller, who was intimately clinging to him. The wedding is off. I'm going to find Willow. She's the only one who can be my bride. He ripped off the boutonniere from his chest, rushing out of the hotel like an arrow shot from a bowstring. Stop him! At Grandmother Sterling's command, the bodyguards immediately surrounded Robert Sterling. Robert, you can go, but first complete the wedding with Sarah Miller. Your wife can only be Sarah Miller, not that wild woman. If you really can't let go, then just as we discussed before, go bring her back and keep her as a kept woman. But she has no right to enter Sterling Manor again, and no right to bear your child. This was Grandmother Sterling's final concession. It was also the arrangement Robert Sterling had already agreed to after being intimate with Sarah Miller. But now that his mother had ID'd it publicly, he felt as if someone was slapping his face hard. Especially the word bride on the screen, which stabbed his heart viciously. He had personally ordered someone to change the bride from Willow to Sarah Miller. Every detail of the wedding was still the way Willow liked it, but the one who had looked forward to this wedding was already gone. He felt that everything before him was utterly ironic. He hated himself for not sticking to his original intentions, only to feel this heart-wrenching pain now. He struggled wildly among the bodyguards, his eyes red-rimmed, roaring, "The one I've always wanted to marry is Willow. Change the bride's name back for me." Sarah Miller immediately burst into tears, crying and questioning him. "Robert, have you forgotten the vows you made before the landmark/bridge to leave engraved locks, Whispering Falls Bridge rituals? Have the words you said about growing old together and giving me a lifetime of happiness all become meaningless?" His only response was Robert Sterling's anguished roar. "Yes, what happened between us was just a temporary fling, it all means nothing." Sarah Miller's face was deathly pale. She even forgot to cry, and immediately turned to run outside. "Fine, since you don't want me anymore, I'll leave too." She thought Robert Sterling would chase after her, but she was disappointed. He was only concerned with yelling at his assistant to book the fastest flight. Grandmother Sterling finally lost patience and slapped Robert Sterling across the face. "You idiot. Marriage is a serious matter, how can you treat it like child's play? Since you slept with Sarah Miller, you should be responsible for her. You must get married today, do you hear me?" Robert Sterling struggled like a trapped beast, but was injected with a tranquilizer in front of everyone. His resistance grew weaker and weaker. In the end, he was half dragged, half carried onto the platform. The officiant announced the start of the wedding. The guests pretended not to see the farce, applauding with forced smiles. As the ring was forced onto Sarah Miller's finger, a tear slipped from the corner of Robert Sterling's eye. He knew he had completely lost the chance to win me back. On their wedding night, Robert Sterling was locked in the bridal suite, feeling unbearably hot and restless. Sarah Miller approached, wearing lingerie, but he shoved her away. "You drugged me?" His eyes were bloodshot, and veins bulged on his forehead. Sarah Miller dangled a pocket watch in her hand, smiling alluringly. "Robert, it wasn't me. My mother said you wouldn't be free until I got pregnant." Looking at Sarah Miller's seductive charm, his heart suddenly swayed, as if his whole mind had been captivated by her. But he clearly had no desire for her at the moment. It wasn't until he found himself kissing Sarah Miller, pressing her down, that he bit his lip by accident and suddenly woke up. It turned out that his infatuation with Sarah Miller that night was due to drugs and hypnosis. How ridiculous that after he sobered up, he thought it was a sudden flutter of the heart and had even hurt Willow because of it. You bitch! He wanted to resist, but couldn't withstand Sarah Miller's provocations. In the end, they rolled around together. The next morning, Robert Sterling looked at the mess on the bed and clutched his head in agony. Sarah Miller, however, stroked her abdomen and smiled smugly. Robert, you need to keep up the good work. That way, I'll have a baby soon. Robert Sterling felt a wave of disgust and couldn't help but gag. Shut up. He grabbed her by the neck. Did my mother send you back to break me and Willow up? You also drugged and hypnotized me that night, didn't you? Sarah Miller's face turned purple from being choked, but she was still smiling. Yes, I drugged you, and I drugged Willow too. But I only used a little bit, and you couldn't resist my temptation. But the dosage in the milk you gave Willow was the largest. That night, with so many men, she's probably completely ruined by now. She's not worthy of you from head to toe. Slap! A slap sent Sarah Miller sprawling. Robert Sterling's eyes were bloodshot. He said each word distinctly. No, you're the dirtiest one. I'm not worthy of Willow. I'm the one who wronged her. 3 months later, Sarah Miller finally became pregnant. Grandmother Sterling kept her promise and ended Robert Sterling's house arrest. He rushed to the Eagle Peak tribe immediately, but was stopped at the village gate. Robert Sterling then knelt on the ground, remaining motionless for an entire day and night. It wasn't until I rode by on my horse that he struggled to crawl towards me. Willow. I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can you give me another chance? I looked down at him. The once dashing Mr. Sterling now had a face full of stubble and looked utterly worn out. Give you a chance to hurt and humiliate me? Mr. Sterling, you just got married. You shouldn't come to this poor, remote place. He shook his head wildly, denying it. Willow, I was forced to marry Sarah Miller. You're the only one I love. Shut up. Don't sicken me. I kicked away his hand as he tried to grab my leg. His skin turned red from the kick, but he didn't seem to feel it, continuing to explain incoherently. Willow, I wasn't thinking straight before. I never thought my mother would drug me and use mind control. I coldly countered him. Then why was I given a larger drug dosage, yet managed to escape unharmed? Don't tell me you, a grown man, were forced into sex by Sarah Miller, a woman who can't even hurt a fly. And don't tell me they controlled you and made you say that having me as a bridesmaid meant you were marrying me, or that they held a knife to your throat and forced you to humiliate me in public. His already trembling body shook even more violently. Willow, I won't deny I had feelings for Sarah Miller at the time, but I never thought about leaving you. I was greedy, and I admit that mistake. But believe me, my feelings for Sarah Miller were just a temporary obsession. Now I only want to spend the rest of my life with you. I'd even stay here with you and not go back to Newport. When he first asked me to leave back then, he also used this tactic of retreating to advance. I couldn't bear for him to give up his vast family fortune for me, so I sacrificed myself and gave up my position as heir. He didn't cherish it, so don't blame me for being heartless and unjust. You want to stay? It's not impossible. As long as you pass the test, I'll consider it. Before Robert Sterling could rejoice, I rode away on my horse. By the time he was brought to the tribal square, he saw me holding a saber, competing with Logan, the bravest warrior. Amidst the flashing blades, every one of my movements was clean and decisive. In the end, I subdued Logan to the ground. Queen Willow! Queen Willow! The tribesmen cheered and celebrated. Logan, far from being angry, knelt on one knee and placed my foot on his knee. Tonight, please allow me to share quarters with you. I smiled lightly and lifted his chin. Granted. This scene stung Robert Sterling. He rushed forward, wanting to pull Logan away, but was pinned to the ground by the guards. He shouted hoarsely, Willow, no! Please, let me be with you. Were these words the high and mighty Mr. Sterling should be saying? He thought that by lowering himself like this, he could make me look at him more. Sadly, he was wrong. I pointed at all the men. If you can defeat all of them, I'll let you be with me for one night. The men of the Eagle Peak tribe prioritized women and already hated him for trick. me away years ago and not cherishing me. Hearing my words now, they all puffed out their chests and surrounded him. Robert Sterling knew he absolutely couldn't beat all of them. He knelt before me, begging for mercy. Willow, I was wrong, I really was. But how can I fight them? Then you can leave. No. I'll fight. Please don't send me away. He had tricked me into marrying far from home when I had no family to support me. Now, he should reap what he sowed. Without surprise, he was beaten until he couldn't fight back at all. He couldn't do anything to those men. He squinted, his eyes narrowed to slits, pleading with me, Willow, please don't let him be with you. I gave him a look of contempt. Robert Sterling, I allowed you in because you destroyed the keepsake my mother gave me. You should think carefully about how to atone, instead of interfering in my private life. Robert Sterling didn't say more. From that day on, ignoring his injuries, he knelt outside my house every day. Until one day, he collapsed from exhaustion. My father was afraid he would die there and bring bad luck, and wanted to chase him away. He suddenly bowed deeply to my father. Please, let me stay. I want to atone, to gain Willow's forgiveness. I know she still loves me. My father gave him a beating. He didn't dare fight back and even praised my father, saying he hit well. I didn't want my father to dirty his hands for me, so I said coldly, Robert Sterling, if you want to atone, go hunt a wild wolf first. At the foot of the snow mountain, Robert Sterling faced a snarling gray wolf, his legs trembling. When had this pampered young master ever faced such a fierce beast? Willow. He looked back at me, his eyes full of pleading. I turned away indifferently. If you don't dare, then go back to your wife and child. Don't come here and dirty my ground. I dare. Robert Sterling suddenly lunged at the gray wolf but was bitten on the arm. Blood gushed out, but he held the wolf's neck tightly and wouldn't let go. Screams of agony echoed through the valley. The gray wolf bit and clawed frantically. Robert Sterling quickly became covered in blood, but still didn't let go. The tribesmen couldn't bear to watch and turned their faces away. Only I watched expressionlessly. Finally, the gray wolf was exhausted and released its fangs. Robert Sterling, covered in blood, crawled to my feet and opened his palm, showing me the wolf tooth stained with blood. Willow, I finally know how much pain you were in when the dog bit you. It's all my fault for not protecting you. See? I killed the wild wolf. Have I passed the test and can stay? According to the rules of the Eagle Peak tribe, since he had hunted a wolf tooth for me, I should indeed give him a chance. But looking at the still clear bite marks on the back of my hand, the humiliating past replayed in my mind like a slideshow. I couldn't be generous. I looked down at him and said softly, so what? You're still not worthy of me. That night, Logan climbed up to my tribal quarters and stayed the night. Robert Sterling knelt in the snowy ground, listening to the sounds of our intimacy, crying like a child. So, witnessing the one you love being intimate with someone else could be this agonizing. He finally understood that the moment I saw him and Sarah Miller intimate, he had already lost me forever. He stayed outside my house for a month, and listened to everything that happened inside for a month. He knew I was truly enjoying myself, not pretending. He also knew that even if he ripped out his heart to show me now, I wouldn't give him another chance. But he didn't give up, continuing to repent every day, until Grandmother Sterling personally came to bring him back to be with Sarah Miller, who was waiting to give birth. He insisted stubbornly, saying he wanted to stay with me and see my child born safely. Grandmother Sterling looked at me and Logan being affectionate and clutched her chest in anger. Idiot. Her child with someone else. What are you worrying about? He was once again tied up and taken back by Grandmother Sterling. Later, I heard that after he returned to Newport, he actually beat Sarah Miller, who was 8 months pregnant, causing a miscarriage. And that wasn't all. He also wanted to kick Sarah Miller, who had just miscarried, out of the Sterling family. The two of them had another round of ugly fighting and conflict, making things extremely unpleasant. But this was outside the scope of my concern. I was busy with prenatal care, busy enjoying the good life in the tribe. When Logan and my child was born, he came to the tribe again, but he didn't even get to see me before he was chased away. Every year after that, on the day I left him, he would come and kneel outside the tribe for the entire day, regardless of wind or snow. Once, he accidentally met my mischievous daughter. He looked at her face, which was exactly like mine, with utter infatuation, and murmured, "Willow." My daughter tilted her head and asked him, "You know my mother?" He nodded, then shook his head, and fled in panic. But because there was a torrential downpour that night, he had an accident on the road and died. When I heard the news, I just paused for a moment. The place where he had the accident was the very same place where I had saved him years ago. But there would never again be a fool who would go through immense hardships to save his life. When Grandmother Sterling received the bad news and came to collect his remains, she specifically came to the village to request a meeting with me. She hoped I would go back with him to see her son off. I refused coldly. After Logan tucked our daughter into bed, he draped a wolf hide cloak over my shoulders and whispered in my ear, "Willow, let me share quarters with you tonight?" I nodded, smiling as I drained the wine in my glass.